Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, Smuggler's Copter. What do you think?
Yeah, you noticed that too, huh?
Yeah, I was like, hey, it's a pretty good set. We got some cool planeswalkers. Pretty sure Nissa's going to be the best card, even though everyone's talking Chandra. And then, 32 copies of Smuggler's Copter in the first top 8. Even you would not have picked that, I bet. 32.
Oh, I don't know. I certainly wouldn't have taken the over of 32.
Well, yeah, I mean, what about 31 and a half? Would you have taken the over on 31 and a half?
Dude, I think I would have taken the over of 27 and a half.
I would never have taken the over on 27. That 32 is extreme. That is some Courser of Krufix action there.
I'm just saying that in retrospect. That's such an insane bet. How could you ever make that bet?
Well, especially when there's control decks in the format, right? Or like mid-range double-down decks.
Sure. I'm sure there is. Just ask him.
Hold on, buddy. You hold on 1 second. The second place deck of this tournament was a Grixis Emerge deck. It's got the word Grixis and the word Emerge. It's not full of 2-drops or anything, is it? Oh, wait.
Dude, it's not full of 2-drops. It's got, like, lots of cards that cost 0 and lots of cards that cost 1. So that makes it a real deck.
I mean, Scrap Heap Scrounger is a heck of a 2-drop for this kind of strategy, actually. And I think he's probably going to see play in a bunch of places. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic. I mean, if you wanted to start at the Grixis Emerge deck.
I figured we'd start at the Grixis.
Because that's one of the things I love about this format is that you can play any Smuggler's Copter deck you want. And this happens to be a Grixis Emerge deck with the Prized Amalgam and Haunted Dead helping fuel Elder Deep Fiend and Wretched Griff. But the Scrap Heap Scrounger actually plays with every different part of the puzzle here.
Yeah, so
the fact that you've got all these discard outlets, because the big one here, the big gain outside of Smuggler's Copter, which is obviously just amazing, is Cathartic Reunion. Gaining 4 Smuggler's Copters and 4 Cathartic Reunions gives, this is just like night and day, these graveyard decks, how much ability they have to discard cards now without having to stoop to random creatures. And the Scrap Heap Scrounger is great because it works with all the discard outlets. Like, you can actually use it as a squee when you have Cathartic Reunion if you need to grind. Or with Smuggler's Copter, you can use it as a squee of sorts by letting it come back to your hand every time. Or you can sacrifice it to a Wretched Griff. Or you can you can use it as part of the Haunted Dead engine. And
so it doesn't go to your hand, right? It goes to it goes straight to the battlefield. No.
No. Go straight to your hand. Straight to the battlefield. I'm sorry.
Battlefield.
It's functionally still a looter in that you're getting up a card, though.
Yeah, it's still squee-like. I'm just saying it doesn't go to your hand. It goes to the battlefield.
No, it's more about it definitely brings back the Prized Amalgam, but the fact that it's going to your graveyard actually just makes it stronger anyway. Like, as long as you can cast it, which, it's 2 mana either way.
Well, yeah, it's great because it's like, it could go from any zone, right? Like, you can discard it to Cathartic Reunion, or you could sacrifice it to Wretched Griff, and you're going to have some recoupability no matter which way you went. I think that's...
And you're functionally up a card, whether you discard it to Cathartic Reunion or Smuggler's Copter,
Yeah. So, this Grixis...
Or if you just sack it to your guy, because you can sack it each time to, each of your Wretched Griffs or Elder Deep Fiends.
Yeah, so this deck is cool, I think. Like, it has a little bit of, like, every deck we talked about for the last few months, right? Like, doesn't it? Like, it's got, like, a little bit of this Elder Deep Fiend action. It even has the Distended Mindbenders that we devoted in episode 2. It's got some Wretched Griff. It, in fact, has more Wretched Griff than the Wretched Griff decks from the previous format. And it's got this whole Prized Amalgam Haunted Dead action that was like a whole different deck in the last format. But because it has all of these Emerge guys, it still plays Kozilek's Return. And I was just like, well, maybe this deck's better if it's just black-blue. Is it really gaining that much from Insolent Neonate? A deck that is a card rather that's the centerpiece of the modern Dredge deck that Tom Ross and folks were were advocating, a month or so ago, oh, but wait, Red really isn't worth it because of Cathartic Reunion. It's just Deck is just like every single theme. I don't know how there's not an Emrakul somewhere. You just should have an Emrakul. It even has the Lilianas. It has the collected brutalities, like all the little things.
It doesn't want Emrakul.
It just should have one copy in the sideboard.
No, why?
Because
how are you going to cast it?
Because it hits every single note if it does that. It's missing one note only. But that's a big note.
No. Where's the spell quellers then?
All right, there's no. It has Smuggler's Copter. Smuggler's Copter is like spell quellers squared.
Dude, Smuggler's Copter is absurd. Smuggler's Copter is Umezawa's Jitte. You know that, right?
Yeah?
Like, it's just Umezawa's Jitte, yeah.
Well, no, it's got to be better because Jitte wasn't, you didn't play it in, like, between half and two-thirds of the decks in the format. It was just insane in the half of the decks of the format that you played it in, right? It was, like, awesome in White Weenie, awesome in, like, green-based or blue-green-based creature decks. But you didn't play it in, like, mono blue. You didn't play it in gifts. Maybe in the sideboard.
It's kind of like Curse Scroll or Skull Clamp. It is kind of just Skull Clamp, too, though.
It's like...
I think the only times this has happened, really, in Magic's history have been, like, or something at least, like, in this vein, have been, I think, like, since, like, not counting Alpha, which had a lot of artifacts that were of questionable power level, but, like, I think Curse Scroll, Masticore, Skull Clamp, and Umezawa's Jitte are the only comparisons. And I don't think any of them are, like, a perfect match.
Well, Smuggler's Copter, like I was saying, it's more ubiquitous than GTA, I think. More ubiquitous than Curse Scroll. Like, a blue-white control deck or a Living Death deck wouldn't generally play Curse Scroll. But
even, like, Tooth and Nail would occasionally not play Skull Clamp.
Well, Elf and Nail would play Skull Clamp, though, right?
Eventually.
Like, I think that Smuggler's Copter might, who knows? It's been one tournament down. But it looks real good for that one tournament down.
It's the best card in the set.
That is...
It's weird how strong it is. But
it is weird how strong it is.
Like we were talking about, a month ago or whatever when it first got revealed. If you just start with like a 2-mana 3/3, a 2-mana 3/3 artifact creature is already like so just Watchwolf can just be in blue or be in black or whatever. Like you're just gonna like throw green and white under the bus completely. But then you start giving more upside because like in addition to being it's like it turns it's ostensibly its drawback is that you turn one of your creatures into a Merfolk Looter potentially with haste. What?
Wait,
you just get to turn a creature into a Merfolk Looter with haste?
You know what's even more goofball about this card is that I actually went back and reread it this morning because I was like having a conflict in my brain. I'm like, surely you have to
blocking.
Well, not that. I was just like, surely you have to hit the. Well, that actually matters too, right? But surely you have to hit the opponent. No, you don't have. You just have to attack.
Yeah, or block.
Yeah, or block. Yeah,
dude, if it turns one of your other creatures into a Merfolk Looter with haste, and it flies. Like they're not going to just make a 2-mana 3/3 flyer, but then it even dodges sorcery speed removal.
That's actually, that's
weird.
The big thing. I don't know if it's worth talking about at this point or when we get to the green-black Delirium decks. I think that is the essential, like, existential question of mid-range and control cards. Forget about strategies in the current standard. You said a few weeks ago that you like Deadweight. I believe you said you like Deadweight better than Ruinous Path, right?
Yeah. So you can tell who's played this format or not by looking at some of the lists people talk about. You can't just show up with. I mean, that doesn't mean you can't play Ruinous Path. It depends on the rest of your deck, of course, and it's still just it's not well positioned. But maybe you think that's what you need. But like, this is not a format for Ruinous Path. This is a format for Deadweight. Like. This is, and it's not to say that Deadweight is necessarily the best thing. Like, obviously, I'd way rather have, like, Harness Lightning or Grasp of Darkness. But the point being that, like, this is a format about speed. And this is a format about tempo and efficiency. And this is a format about a few messed up, like unbelievably busted cards that have like a tremendously warping influence on the rest of the game.
But I don't know if I don't really want to do this yet, but I just think on the note we're at, maybe let's jump over and then jump back to Grixis. But if you look at the green-black Delirium deck played by Abe, is it Schnacky?
Third place deck?
Yeah, so Abe's, I guess, kind of with you. He has only Grasp of Darkness in his main deck. That's his only dedicated spell removal card. But he's got
like Liliana's sort of, you know.
Well, and he's got a Noxious Gearhulk because he's got Traverse the Uvenwald, right? But I was talking about spell slots. But he's got 4 Deadweight and only 2 Ruinous Path in his sideboard because he likes Deadweight more than Ruinous Path. But I think that really the existential question is, if you're going to invest in 3 casting cost black point removal, is it Ruinous Path or Murder? Because,
it's Ruinous Path out of the sideboard.
Well,
yeah. It's Ruinous Path out of the sideboard.
Yeah, but severely limited in his interaction with Smuggler's Copters. He's got 4 Grasp of Darkness and no other way to improve. That's it. Right? If you could go Murder is what I'm saying, right? Like, is it Ruinous Path or is it Murder?
You do not want to murder a Smuggler's Copter. That's horrible, man.
Is it really so? You can murder it before it attacks.
Yeah, I know, for 3 mana. What are you doing? No. Okay, Doomblade guy. No, you're not bored. He doesn't have Ruinous Path to sideboard in against Smuggler's Copter.
Of course, Patrick. Of course. I actually think this is down a different line. I actually think Ruinous Path is good, and I think that if I played a deck that was in the market for point black removal, I would be at least tempted to play 4. Not because of these arguments, but because if there's ever games that you want Ruinous Path, and I think there's probably a fair number of main deck games that you want Ruinous Path, you need to have real ways to interact with Gideon. I think people are going to sleep on Gideon for maybe a week, and then they're going to remember he's one of the best aggressive cards. Because these decks are woefully underarmed in terms of fighting Gideon. You know this when you played Mardu at the.
I'm not trying. I just disagree completely.
Really?
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think you need any help again. You could, but of course you would board Ruinous Path in against Gideon if you know they have Gideons. But dude, the person Smuggler's Copter beats the hell out of Gideon.
I don't know. I just on camera this weekend, I saw Brad activate a Gideon he goes turn 4 Gideon plus Gideon on turn 5, play his 5th land, and then play a Verdurous Gearhulk onto it. That's just probably a common line that people are going to be able to do. And
you think that Ruinous Path is the way out of this?
Well, I think that you Ruinous Path in between, and then you don't get killed by a gigantic Gideon because it's not there. That's what I think.
Dude, they play a Gideon, and they get a 2/2.
Yeah.
And then you spend your turn killing Gideon, and then they play Verdurous Gearhulk and make a 6/6 that hits you, and now you already used your 3-mana removal spell, and they have a 6/6 and a 4/4.
Well, that sounds terrible to me.
It is terrible. That's not the way to fight Gideon.
What's the way to fight Gideon, then?
Attack. You've got Gnarlwood Dryad and Grim Flayer and Sylvan Advocate and Smuggler's Copter, and you've got the Gearhulk of your own. You've got lots of things you can be doing. You could just be play a removal, okay, they play Gideon, and then you Grasp of Darkness, the token, untap, and attack for 4 with Grim Flayer. I don't know, man. You don't want to, or just power up your Tireless Tracker by playing a land, get in there. You don't, dude, this is not a format for playing with, slow, mediocre answers to the, and it's not to say that you can't, board Ruinous Path in those spots, but, that is not, the A game.
All right.
And I definitely would, 4 Ruinous Paths sounds surprising. Maybe it depends on what the rest of the decks are, but I think that there's just some people where you actually want Ruinous Path, where you want more removal. It's just that main deck. It's funny. I actually like Murder more main deck.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that the essential question is Murder against Ruinous Path.
No, but the Ruinous Path, we're talking about the sideboard.
I'm just talking about to play. But you
I think it's night and day different. I think they're so different. I think that Ruinous Path is like a sideboard card.
I think all these cards are too slow, and then I'm just going to go straight to Grip of Desolation. Because that card, it's good against whatever kind of thing someone's attacking.
What are you talking about? You're talking about the 6-cost spell?
Yeah, I'm talking about exiling things, and I mean it. I mean it if I play that card. And I got your other thing. Excuse me?
Not Planeswalkers.
Well, it gets Gideon when he's attacking you.
Who the hell wins with Gideon? What are you talking about, man? That's not the format. Do you think Gideon's about to make a big surge?
I think Gideon's going to come back, yeah. I think that 4 mana... I'm not sure if it's Gideon. I'm not 100% sure. But I think 4 mana white things are. Because if it's not Gideon, it's Gisela. I think they're going to come back. And they're going to come back soon. By the Pro Tour. They're too good.
Maybe. But, do you like Gideon against white-red vehicles? That's the defining deck of the format.
I think that you could easily lock up the board, lock up the ground with your stuff that lines up a little bit better than their stuff, and then just beat them with cards that are slightly more powerful. Yeah, I think that's just what. I mean, it's not just Gideon. I think that probably Archie is probably going to be.
Specifically, do you think that Gideon himself is a good card against white-red vehicles?
I think that Gideon is. I think it depends on the rest of your deck. I think it's really bad sometimes, and it's pretty good sometimes.
I would guess it's horrible. They have 4 Smugglers Copters,
but it's Copter parity, right? It's not like
They have 4.
Why don't I have 4 Smugglers Copter?
You can have 4 Smugglers Copters. Do you have Veteran Motorist and DePaula Pilot Exemplar in your deck?
Well, probably not, because if I'm not white-red vehicles, I probably can't cast those cards.
So, the white-red vehicles deck, their Smuggler's Copters are just always 4/4s. And it's not even a response window. Veteran Motorist and DePaula Pilot Exemplar both give the bonus before the Copter is active. So, the Copter is just always a 4/4, so it always kills Gideon in one hit.
So...
You've got Fleetwheel Cruiser.
So here's the thing.
Fleetwheel Cruiser does 6 damage when there's a Motorist or a DePaula, and it has Trample. So if you block with the 2/2 token, Gideon dies.
So I will quickly agree that if we're talking about mostly Copter or vehicles-based fights, right, not just decks, the red-white deck is... That's the vehicles deck, right? They had got a guy that gives vehicles haste, for the love of God, right? But I'm just saying, I think that some of these cards are really
I don't think they'll play that guy, though.
Context.
I don't think they should play that guy, though, for what it's worth.
I'm just saying, if that's the conversation we're in, you can push that conversation, and red-white is always on top. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm just saying the Gideons. Anyway... we'll see. There's lots of worlds where Gideon could be great. Maybe Gideon is just awesome against the people, the stuff that people do that's going to be good against white-red. I don't know. Gideon's a great card.
Well, I'm not sure right now. Just looking at how the first tournament shook out, right?
The fact that there's 5 Boros decks in the top 8 and Gideon's unplayable against them?
Well, and three of the decks in the top 8 are basically the exact same red-white vehicles deck, including the first place winner. And they already figured out to kill their darlings before anyone else even entered the tournament, which was... I thought that was the most impressive thing about
What's the darlings?
They didn't play Inventor's Apprentice. Inventor's Apprentice, if you're going to play red-white vehicles, when you have cards like Toolcraft and Exemplar in your deck, I think that it's not intuitive, especially if you've got Veteran Motorist, which is a 2-mana card, 2-mana beatdown creature, 3/1 for red-white, to just not play a red 1-drop. Because, no. It seems on paper, if I had built this deck, I do not think I would have gotten to the point that I was cutting that card at this point. Yeah, because it's very good in other decks, right? Just
to make sure that we're on the 2 people did play Inventor's Apprentice in their top 8 decks.
I'm talking
from the Boros, but you're right. 3 of them did not.
Yes.
Everybody who was playing the same deck as the winning deck, as CVM, yeah.
That's always to me the most impressive thing when you have best version of the best deck and you figure out to cut the Goblin Pile Driver or something. Like, I'm like, oh, my God, nobody ever figures out to do that. But they did it ahead of time. No, of course it's a great card. Like, in Red-Black aggro, for example, Adventurer's Apprentice it's completely different than in a Red-White. Like, that Red-White deck that CVM played is like a mid-range deck.
So now we're talking about vehicles, man. This whole temporary tangent for Delirium that has touched on 4 different decks.
We got to get back to Grixis.
Let's finish this Grixis thing, man.
Fix this Grixis, and then we'll get. It's crazy. One week, nothing but Smuggler's Copters, and there's so many things to talk about. That's
because you can play any kind of Smuggler's Copter deck you want. So, what do you think about Perpetual Timepiece?
So, I don't know. This is a card I wouldn't even have thought to play. I don't know. It's like non-intuitive to me. It's like
just milling yourself.
Yeah, but then it's just like a weird Gaia's Blessing too. Like it's.
I think it's mostly the self-mill, man. I don't think you really use the ability.
You don't use the other ability. Yeah.
No.
Like I never want to use a card like this to like actually just use cards in my deck. But I get it. Like sometimes you draw extra cards because you're flipping over prized amalgams that you can just get back for free.
With 4 Scrap Heap Scroungers, 4 Haunted Dead, 4 prized amalgam, and 3 Kozilek's returns, you're literally drawing a card every other turn.
With why don't you play 4? It doesn't have any mana activation cost.
Because tons of things in this deck do that. There's diminishing returns to all this, man. At a certain point, you got to just get with the getting.
What do you really think? There's diminishing returns? I think if you have like 2 or 3 timepieces in play, you're going to get more card advantage then.
No, they are
diminishing mana.
Returns. Yeah, I know, but they're still diminishing returns. Absolutely. They all do. Scrap Heap Scrounger costs mana because you have to actually activate it. Haunted Dead costs mana because you have to actually activate it. Prized Amalgam costs mana because you have to activate something. Kozilek's return costs mana because you have to play an Eldrazi. And, like, all the Eldrazi cost at least 1 mana.
Like, if it's me, I mean, I probably would have played, like, the 4th Kozilek's return or 2 Crypt Breakers or, like, a Crypt Breaker and a Kozilek return, something like that. I would have never thought to play the timepiece.
Yeah, I'm not in love with the timepieces. I don't think they're good. But I understand why they're there, you know, like what it is that he's trying to do. I personally would try to play without him, too. But I would play 4 Wretched Gryphs. That's what I would do. It's not close for me.
Not for nothing, because this is just, you're talking about like a one game window. You know, I was watching the finals, and he only has 23 lands in his deck, and he does have some ambitious casting costs. He just got stuck, and he got the bejesus beat out of him by red-white vehicles, which is what happens if you get stuck on lands, right?
This is not, okay, so to begin with, this is not a realistic mana base. Like, I mean, this is cool deck, great deck, a lot of great stuff going on here. This is the start of something good. This is not a real mana base. This is just not even close.
Well, if you're not green, especially, right? Like if this deck shell were green, I could see trying to get away with 24 lands, maybe. But 23 lands and not being green is you're not getting helped out by any of your grapple-y type, vessel type cards.
Dude, this deck has 14 red sources, 12 blue sources, and 12 black sources.
So you're saying it's like pretty good at hitting one of its colors every other game or something?
It has one card in the deck that can cast its black 1-drops on turn 1. That's the plan? You're just playing 1-drops, and you can't play any of them? The 2-drops, at least it has 5 ways. I'm sorry, not 2-drops. The red 1-drops, at least it has 6 ways to play a red 1-drop on turn 1. But that's not exactly good. This mana base needs to be completely reimagined.
Or you choose different spells. Right?
It still involves reimagining the mana base. There's no way you're going to end up with a mana base that's 14 red, 12 black, 12 blue. You're planning to, like, Elder Deep Fiend is double blue.
Well, and he's got Sanctums, which are colorless, right? Like, and that doesn't help any of his directions.
I'm just saying that, like, whatever you want to do to the rest, that's fine. One thing that needs to inform it is that you can't just play 14 red, 12 blue, 12 black, and be like, with your 12 black supporting these Lilianas, with your 12 blues supporting these, 12 black supporting Distended Mindbender and Liliana, 12 blues supporting Elder Deep Fiend and Summary Dismissal, and then your deck's 14 red because you actually need Cathartic Reunion just to fix your mana. I mean, I think it's a cool deck. I think you have to, like, be a lot more realistic. Like, play some, I mean, you could play, there's a variety of things you could play. You could play Pilgrim's Eye, you could play less Sanctums, you could play more dual lands, you could, like, emphasize 2 of the colors, you could play Prophetic Prism if you really wanted to, you could play, and there's lots of things. You could play 25 land instead of 23.
Well, I think Pilgrim's Eye is just a great way to go because he's got so many emerge guys. You
can play Tormented Voice, and then play more red.
And Cathartic Reunion?
Yeah.
I think that I'm in love with this idea.
You could play Fiery Temper.
Well, what do you think about the Neonate? I think it's like the weakest card in his deck. It's like not that good. Like,
I just don't think I want to see what this mana base is where you're actually playing the Neonate on turn 1 reliably. If you showed me the mana base with, like, even just like 11 ways to play, maybe 12. If you have like 11 or 12 ways that you're playing the Neonate on turn 1 and the rest of the mana actually works, maybe. Particularly if you had like some Fiery Temper type stuff. But like, as is, it just seems like I don't know if there is an as is. I just don't understand what the mana base. Like, I think you have to like build a mana base that is actually realistic and go from there. And I think that whatever that mana base is unlikely to be as conducive to 1-drops as, but maybe it needs to be.
I'm just gonna give you like to me the obvious counter argument, which is that you got these 1-drops, you just don't cast them, right? So your first turn is like Evolving Wilds or whatever, okay? Land comes into play tapped, you follow up with, I don't know, Sanctum, whatever it is, and you just cast your Smuggler's Copter. On turn 3, you probably want to have the ability to play like a Cryptbreaker or a Neonate for only 1 mana, and then do something else. Because you played Copter on turn 2. I think that's a reasonable possibility.
Isn't just Fiery Temper so much better in that spot than Cryptbreaker?
Well, don't you want to be able to turn on your Copter?
Yeah, with whatever I spent 2 mana on, like Scrap Heap Scrounger.
All right. I mean,
I don't know. Maybe that's the way you want to do it.
When you said let's play Cathartic Reunion and Tormenting Voice, I mean, I became very excited at this.
Dude, I don't know. I'm saying that, like, I think you could play Cryptbreaker. I'm saying I think you could play Insolent Neonate. I just think that you have to reimagine the mana base and try to understand what it is you're doing. Like, how are you going to cast all these spells? That's it. I mean, props 10 out of 10 for power. I mean, who else is messing with the guy who gets Elder Deep Fiend and Kozilek's Return and Smuggler's Copter and Cathartic Reunion, even has in the sideboard Distended Mindbender and Liliana?
I mean, he has Summary Dismissal too, right? Like,
this
he has like every ace.
This is a true Grixis deck. It's like you get to like this is like the kind of Grixis deck Nico Bolas would play. Yeah.
I mean, this deck just. Whenever we're going to make fun of the mana base, or, at least...
It's not make fun of them. I'm not trying to make fun of them.
It needs to be improved, right?
Yeah, I think this is I mean, it's not just because it's Grixis. This is my favorite deck in the top 8.
Well, he can step up to any opponent. That's all I'm saying, right? Like, I don't know. The one time I saw it on camera, he got beat up by red-white vehicles. Like, and it was a slaughter. And Steven didn't even have a good draw. That's the other thing. His draw was just clunky.
So, on the green-black, like on the, I guess just black Delirium, or black Smuggler's Copter tip, we were talking about green-black Delirium briefly earlier.
Yeah.
What do you think about, like Abe's list specifically, with his new cards being 2 Verdurous Gearhulk, 1 Noxious Gearhulk, 4 Smuggler's Copters, and then his sideboard having 2 Nissa Vital Force?
So,
and of course, the obviously Blooming Marsh.
Traverse the Uvenwald's awesome in this deck because, like you talked about, I think a week or 2 ago, Traverse the Uvenwald, Noxious Gearhulk, 1 copy. It's beautiful, right? That you're just bulleting for not just a removal card, but a really powerful removal card. I like that a lot. I actually have maybe something that would be a controversial comment about this, maybe to you.
Ooh.
I think it might be controversial here. I think Ishkana Graph Widow is a low power card right now. It's a little slow. Getting Delirium and then getting to the ability to cast this on turn 5 or so, I think it's not really that good enough against fast, dedicated strategy. And then if you're in the Haymaker zone, it's just outclassed. Like, Gearhulks are way better than Ishkana straight up, right? Like, you just have a huge thing, it just tramples over the Ishkana stuff. And you could distribute the Verdurous Gearhulk +1/+1 counters just to create impossible block situations for an Ishkana. So if we have 5s, I think that's fine. But I think that maybe we reduce that to like 1 copy because we're going to bullet for it with Traverse the Ulenwald or something. But I think we're past the point that we're happy with Ishkana as our hold the fort. Controversial, horrible, agree, disagree?
Well, I don't know about all your reasoning.
Yeah.
And all that mumbo jumbo you were saying when you were doing all the talking. But like, I agree with the conclusion that Gearhulk is better than Ishkana. I think Ishkana is still good. I just think that, like, how many 5-drops are we really going to play in this format? And I think that the first Ishkana is worth so much more. Like, I would rather have the first Ishkana than the second Verdurous Gearhulk. But if we're talking about playing like 4 or 5, like if we're going to play 4 or 5 drops, I want the first one to be Verdurous Gearhulk. I want the second one to be Ishkana. And then I just want to have Gearhulks until I can't play them anymore. Then we can talk about whether, like, if you really want 6, then we can talk about what's better, a second Ishkana or a Noxious Gearhulk. I just think that I would play 4 Verdurous Gearhulks. I think Verdurous Gearhulk is amazing.
Yeah, so I like.
I don't mind. I think you could play 3 Verdurous Gearhulks and 1 Ishkana. I just wouldn't play the second Ishkana. Yeah, I just wouldn't play the second.
I think you could have 4 Ishkanas. I just don't think you're going to have multiple main deck and a bullet deck. I think that it's probably.
I'm only talking about main deck.
I think it's probably fine to optimize into 4. I'm sure there are matchups where 4 Ishkana are awesome.
The reason I don't like Ishkanas in the sideboard, though, I mean, maybe the second one is good, but the reason I'm not like big on Ishkana in the sideboard either is because I think that Nissa Vital Force is actually a pretty good sideboard card.
Oh, I like Nissa a lot. I know I didn't mention on that one. I actually see. If I were playing this kind of strategy, I can see myself playing way more than 2 Nissas. A couple of reasons. In the matchups that you want them, you want to draw it, and you want to have it on demand, right?
You still just have so many 5s, though.
But here's the important thing. Nissa is the definition of a card that you want the follow-up copy, right? Because the first one's going to die. If all things are going right, it's dead.
No.
Oh, so you just want to kill it and then
it's
just
cute,
ride?
But like that's like
just riding.
Dude, Flores, people are not like. I would not worry about the people who think that their answer in life is to just ruin his path, your planeswalker. That's not this format.
No, I'm saying
the reason
Nissa's going to die because I'm going to kill it myself.
No, but that's not when you want another Nissa. Because, like, if you just have a Nissa, if you have a Nissa in your hand and your opponent is, like, bashing you with, like, they've got Depwa and a Fleetwheel Cruiser or something, you don't want to have 2 Nissas.
Well, hold on, friend. If my opponent is playing red-white vehicles, my sideboard Nissas are probably still in my sideboard.
Okay, how about this? If your opponent is bashing you with Chandra or Torrential Gearhulk or Goblin Dark Dweller or Needle Spires or Lumbering Falls or whatever, if they're bashing you with their own Verdurous Gearhulks, if they have Archangel Avacyn in their hand, if they have Spell Queller, whatever it is, it's the problem with Nissa is not the times where your opponent plays a removal spell on it. The problem is when your opponent has an board advantage and Nissa doesn't help you catch up.
I agree. So are you saying in those situations you'd rather just like set them over the Transgress of the Mind and maybe even have Distended Mindbender?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, Mindbender is so much... In most of the situations you described, I'd rather have a Mindbender than a Nissa to start.
I agree.
Like, it's pretty good body, and it just real messes up their ability to press the advantage.
I do think, though, that the Nissas are good in small number, because I think that the haste... Like, I think that Nissa is better than Ruinous Path in a lot of contexts for killing Planeswalkers. And I think that it's just a reliable catch-all. It rounds out, like it's a victory condition, it's card advantage.
Its remainder is amazing. right? Like for 5 mana, you can kill like a planeswalker, like a lot of stuff, and then you still have this amazing thing that if they don't deal with it immediately, you're probably just going to go ultimate.
Yeah, I think it's. I think that it's well, if assuming that, that they have nothing, right? I think that it's. I think it's just a great card, but I do think Diminishing Returns is the story. This green black Delirium deck though. What do you think about the de-emphasizing of Tireless Tracker? You know, because obviously Ishkina makes a lot of sense, but go ahead. Yeah, you get the idea.
That's one of the things I don't like about it. There's a lot of lists that went to 2 Tireless Trackers this weekend, but I actually like the ability of like Tireless Tracker to pace Smuggler's Copter. Right, like, so you don't always have Smuggler's Copter, or they might be a better Copter deck than you. But Tireless Tracker, like especially from the play, I think it does a good job of proxying some of the things that Smuggler's Copter is good at. So you just like press them and create like difficult combat situations. That's one thing. Second of all, I think this deck can be pretty choppy. This deck is like the definition of a deck that can draw the wrong half. Right? Look at this deck. It's got like 6 drops, a bunch of 5 drops, but then also like aggressive 1 and 2 drops. Like maybe you want to smooth out like the middle. And I'm going to say something. This might be heretical to you, might be heretical healing to you. I think I like Tireless Tracker more than Liliana at the 3 right now. Like I'm just not impressed with Liliana in a lot of the common situations that we're going to find ourselves in. Which does not mean it's not a great card. Maybe you round out to 4 after sideboarding. You need some Planeswalkers for your Delirium. But like I think like Tireless Tracker is like a high impact card.
Wait, so would you want to cut the Lilianas that he's already down to 3?
I mean, I would, given the same situation, I might go 4 Tireless Tracker, 1 Liliana instead of 2 and 3.
No, Delirium, man.
I know Delirium. I know, but
also Tireless Tracker isn't good in this format. I agree with you, by the way, that Liliana has gotten much worse.
Like she just does her impact is low, and her.
I agree, but I think she's still good enough. I just think she's worse. I think it's totally reasonable to play only like 2 or 3, but I do like her for enabling your Delirium.
So I
also just think Tireless Tracker is not great in Delirium. I think it's better in some other decks, but it's fine here. It's just not great.
Well, 2 things on that. I had a thought. Could maybe this wipe all the Tireless Tracker and Liliana? Is it possible the 3-mana Nissa is better than some of the other options at 3? Like, I know that sounds real weird, but like...
I think it just sounds real wrong.
All right.
It's so bad with Smuggler's Copter, and it's like the pumping up is like... you're not like swarming your opponent.
Okay.
And it's just so easy. Like people I think that Nissa is bad for the same reason that Gideon is bad. This format is not about making some small ground-based tokens with a Planeswalker that is easily killed by a Smuggler's Copter getting powered up.
Popped by Smuggler's Copter. That's it.
Yeah. The reason I like Liliana is that at least Liliana kills like the Motorist and Selfless Spirit. Selfless Spirit and the Motorist can actually, they are actually very annoying in play.
Fair enough. So
she's not great, but she's fine. She's like a little better than Deadweight.
Here's the reason I like Tireless Tracker. And maybe this is a fungible reason, right? Like you can just remove the word Tireless Tracker and replace it with something else, and it makes a perfect amount of sense. I like having a pretty sizable, decent body, which it will be at this point in the game probably. So I could just like slam with my Verdure Secure Hulk that turn.
See, I want
somebody there.
I agree that you want somebody, but I just don't think Tireless Tracker is well set up for that job.
Well, Advocate is the best guy at that job, right? Like he has.
I think Grim Flayer is.
Really? Yeah, Advocate plays defense.
Yeah, but the Grim Flayer has trample, and you get to start Prognostic Sphinxing. And when you have and plus the Grim Flayer goes up to 4/4 faster than Sylvan Advocate does. So like your Grim Flayer because on turn 5 when you play the Gear Hulk, your Advocate isn't large yet. It's fine on turn 6, like you're only off by 1 turn.
Well, provided you make
that can make all the difference.
Well, yeah, like so you
Grim Flayer is the best.
So I was thinking, this is a completely separate line, just brewing up a Black-Green Delirium deck. I was thinking maybe the best thing to do is go super low to the ground, and then just have, like, a bunch of things that cost 1 and 2, and then just Verdurous Gearhulk up top. Or you just go, like, Gnarlwood Dryad, Traverse, Oath, Deadweight, like a ton of ones that are, like, high-impact ones, but still, like, Grasp of Darkness, etc. And then still Sylvan Advocate and Grimflayer, but they're just all 1s and 2s, and then just Verdurous Gearhulk. Just, like, always be able to play your spells and have a ton of selection with, like, Oaths and Traverses, etc.
Well, I mean, this deck is already that pretty close, right? Like, if you look, his spells, all 15 of his non-creature spells cost 2 or less.
Oh, no, I'm saying no Liliana, no Tireless Tracker. Just one.
I know. I'm saying that this deck is already
main deck. That's what I was thinking.
This deck is already within 5 cards of the deck you're describing. I guess 8 if you count Noxious Gearhulk and Ishkana.
Well, I think I would be hard pressed to not play one Noxious Gearhulk and one Ishkana. So maybe it's close enough.
So that's 6 cards. So then you're just talking about playing 2 Verdurous Gearhulks and 4 Deadweights. Done. That's your deck.
I think. What do you think about that strategy? It seems like pretty tight.
Yeah, it sounds bad.
Bad?
It's not bad by much. It's almost the exact same as this deck, and this deck looks great.
It's 6 off of this good version.
No, I think that it's closer to right than this, because I think that, like, I would rather have, like, your version has 4 Verdurous Gearhulks, which is like, this version has 2, your version has 4. So, like, already your deck is 2 closer to the thing that I would like.
But my deck also has Oaths. So, like, I actually...
I don't know. I think you're just... I don't know how you... Okay, I don't know any... Like, no, I'm skipping over that.
So I have fewer lands and more...
Why would you want to play Oaths and Deadweights? That doesn't make any sense.
Versus. So I always have a 1.
You don't want Deadweight and Oath. Deadweight isn't actually good. Like, you're playing it because you don't have anything else that costs 1. If all your other cards cost 1, that's not the time to move in on Deadweight. Deadweight isn't, like, for rounding out your 1s.
All right, man.
Deadweight is for the person who doesn't want to play with 1s.
You convinced me.
I think you could still play Deadweight. I would play Deadweight.
Grip of Desolation.
No. I would just not play Oath. Okay. I just think Oath of Nissa doesn't make any sense. You're going to, like, play Ponder to find your Delver of Secrets? Well, that would never work.
Patrick, the reason I'm playing it is because they're enchantments.
I know, but so is Deadweight.
So what do you think about the Mind Rack Demon? He doesn't have any Mind Rack Demons.
Yeah, Mind Rack Demon's not good.
I don't like it either.
You could play 1 if you really wanted to, but... Because I do like, by the way, Verdurous Gearhulk.
Well, yeah. It's
powering up a flyer.
It's freaking awesome if you go 4th turn Mind Rack Demon, 5th turn Verdurous Gearhulk. I mean, you are riding the Smuggler's Copter to victory at that point.
I like that Mind Rack Demon, blocks the Smuggler's Copter even when it's powered up by Deplo or the Motorist. And I like that Mind Rack Demon gives you another big body so that you can actually, like, soak up some Fleetwood Cruiser damage. So I think that it's not terrible to play 1 Mind Rack Demon. I just don't know that you would. I could imagine I could imagine you not. I'd rather have. I mean, I don't know. I want some bodies.
But I think he's a good body.
Yeah, he's an okay body. But I think that there is a point you made earlier that I think is very salient, but there's a continuation of it, which is this is a deck that sometimes you draw the wrong cards. And that is true. That was true before, and it's true now. However, it has a much, much, much different response to that. You literally have 4 Smuggler's Copters in your deck now.
Loot that stuff away.
Exactly. I think that the reason you don't need Tireless Tracker is partially because of the format matching up, like Tireless Tracker just not being great at blocking and being too slow, and the format not being about attrition-y, grindy card advantage. You know, like, once you're playing Verdurous Gearhulk, your game plan is not about grinding the other person out with a 2-for-1. Your game plan is about beating their face. And Smuggler's Copter does so much better of a job of smoothing out. It even powers up your Delirium. Like, it enables... Yes, and not just because of the... Like, it loots away land so that you can get land into your graveyard without having to play stinky Evolving Wilds.
What do you think?
It lets you loot away a second Smuggler's Copter so you have an artifact. It lets you loot away an extra Verdurous Gearhulk so that your Grim Flare is literally powered up on turn 3 when it's that's just...
That's super sweet.
You can go turn 1 Gnarlwood Dryad, turn 2 Smuggler's Copter, and then just hit them for 6 on the next turn.
So, what do you think of Grapple with the Past in this deck? I know people play it a lot in this kind of strategy.
Great.
Yeah, it's like
it's still good. It's better than it's still better than you. Dude, this card is so much better than Regrowth. Grapple with the Past is a messed up Magic card. I question the design decision to just make Regrowth this good. It's so weird how much better of a self-mill card it is. I think you also got to factor in when you're talking about Gnarlwood Dryad and Grim Flare and Ishkana. Part of the thing you're getting, part of the reason they're so good is that you're getting Delirium early and often. Grapple with the Past is so low opportunity cost. Like, it's an instant, but it threatens to power up your Delirium guys at instant speed. It fixes your mana so that you can just play 23 land in your deck with all these 5 and 6 drops and not miss your land drops. This deck is smooth as butter.
So
I would play Grapple with the Past.
2 things on that. Like, I like it when you have, like, Gnarlwood Dryad and then you're swinging and your opponent's just like, oh, man, you guys only 1/1 right now. I could probably trade with it with my Pilgrim's Eye or whatever. And you can just upgrade mid-combat without using a card, really. And that's awesome when that hits. But the other thing that's, I think, awesome is, as I would guess that most people haven't gotten the chance to do this yet, is just rebuying a Verdurous Gearhulk when you rip Grapple with the Past mid-game.
So good.
Because, like, that card is just soaks up so many Magic the Gathering cards, right? It's like 1 million power distributed across somewhere between, however many bodies, and you just spend all these cards to just interact with it. You're just like, I'll get it back. I'll get all these 1/1 counters back.
Like, this deck has 3 Grapple with the Past and 4 Traverse. It functionally has 30 mana. And despite the fact that it has 30 mana, it's not like, out of its 30 mana, 11 of them become creatures. Hissing Quagmire, 4/4 Death Touch when you've got the Sylvan Advocate.
Yep.
Traverse, go find Verdurous Gearhulk, Grapple with the Past, get Gearhulk back. This deck, this is so many Mutavaults. And then you could actually even Smuggler's Copter to loot away extra land if it comes to that. And that's not even counting Tireless Tracker drawing cards.
But I thought how do we move this? So I like a lot of the stuff going on in this deck. Would you go 4?
We got to talk about vehicles though. No, I don't know. I like 3. It's fine. You can play 4. You can play 3. Either way, I just think you've got more good cards than you can fit.
I don't like Liliana very much in this deck. If you were to play,
I don't like Liliana very much either. I think it's okay if you want to go to 2. That's fine.
What about like an Obnixilus? Is that terrible?
Yeah.
Okay. It was so many 5s, right?
Yeah, it's just not going to be better than an Ishkana, and it's definitely not going to be better than Verdurous Gearhulk. What do you think about? I want to talk on the white-red vehicles because there's actually like a lot of variety among the white-red vehicles decks.
So I mean,
and obviously there's 3. The defining one, I think that pretty clearly, Chris Van Meter and company. They put 3 in the top 8, including the win.
Yeah.
No question, it was the deck of the tournament.
This is the deck of the tournament.
This is the defining deck of the format at the moment. This is step 1 now.
So here's the thing. There's 2 things about this deck. If you take nothing away from this podcast other than these 2 things, I think these are 1. Number 1. If you can't beat this kind of deck, you got to rethink your strategy. Like, you got to at least have a plan to beat different kinds of stuff going on in this deck, because this deck does, 6 different things. All right? So, If you're all in on, only... I think the easiest thing to do when you're looking at this deck on a superficial basis is look at the left-hand column and be like, oh, 2-1 for 2, 1-2 for 1, 1-1/3-2 for 1. If I load my deck up with stuff that's point removal good, or just blocks pretty well against small creatures, I'm going to gain some additional percentage points against Chris Van Meter's deck. Wrong, gonna lose. All right? So you can't only just go against, because this deck does a bunch of different things. That's 1. The second thing is, this deck has a weird build, right? It's 21 creatures, 24 lands, 15 other stuff.
But the 15 other stuff isn't really 15 other stuff. I think that really this deck is 30 creatures, and then it's literally just 30 creatures, 6 removal spells, and 24 land.
So the thing is, even though this deck often takes the role of beatdown in the matchup that it's playing in, but the secret of this deck is even though it's got cards like Thraben Inspector, Selfless Spirit, Toolcraft Exemplar, like just clearly beatdownish creature decks, it's secretly a mid-range deck. And I think that's part of the key of why this deck is so good.
Yeah, I mean, Thraben Inspector draws a card. Veteran Motorist, Scry 2. That's a lot of selection right there. Depla is obviously the mid-range.
Depla is just like a tome, right?
And then Sky Sovereign, of course, right? And then Pia Noir is actually not only a 2-for-1, but another mana sink, another tome of sorts, right? And the Smuggler's Copter looting gives you more advantage as the game goes on. I think you're absolutely right. I think this deck can play a very mean aggressive deck, but it's actually just a fantastic mid-range deck.
Yeah, so, like, that's the thing. This deck.
I also think that whichever white-red vehicles deck, whichever Boros deck is like slightly bigger, this is a classic example, and we see this all the time. I think you actually were the person who turned me onto this like over a decade ago. The idea of when you have these two different decks, the one that's slightly small, like slightly slower, it just goes slightly bigger, and then it actually has the advantage.
Yeah, they're advantaged heads up, right? Unless both decks have the same end game. If the decks have the same end game, the faster deck is better. But if decks are, if one is slightly bigger, so they don't have the same end game, the one that's slower is better.
Right.
But this is a great example because like this deck has Sky Sovereign, right? So if we're gonna say that like this is the mean thing that happens in this format is that people have access to a 3/3 flying looter, right? That's the thing. There were the maximum number of copies of Smuggler's Copter in the top 8 of the first event. If you cannot,
and just to make clear, this is not something that is common.
No, this doesn't happen.
I don't think this has ever happened in the history of the SCG Open circuit for week 1 after a new set.
Like the last time I can think of something parallel to this happening is when you won the Pro Tour, which is weird because it was like not a standard tournament, right? It's like a block tournament, so the rules are a little bit different. But it was like almost maximum number of copies of Courser of Crofix and with the 03
Sylvan
Keratin. But it wasn't even everyone, right? There was still a Heroes deck in the top 8.
There was a Jace the Mind Sculptor Grand Prix one time. That wasn't new. That wasn't the new format. That was known.
But and that's very unusual. Like something like this happening, you have to. This is the thing. You have to be able to deal with these kinds of threats, which is fast, aggressive, but also flexible threats, which is, I think, that's the weird part, right? It's not just a 3/3 flyer, which would be bad enough for 2. It's a 3/3 flying looter. So it's getting them to what they want next. And the thing about CVM's deck is this deck has so much reload to it, right? Like, Depala, Pia Nalar, to a degree, Veteran Motorist, these cards are like, yo, answer my first wave. My next 3 cards are going to get me to the second wave if they're not the second wave themselves. And like by the third wave, you're playing against Sky Sovereign, which means that if you don't have a thing that's as good as a 6/5 flying, what is this? It's like the Titan, the red Titan, right? That's what it does every time it attacks. Like, you have to have a thing that is competitive with their thing, or they're going to beat you. Like a 6/5 flyer is pretty big in most standard formats. This one also has a red Titan ability and can potentially just be like, in there.
So I wanted to touch on a few of the interactions, but just speaking directly to the 6/5, I think it's actually easy to miss how incredibly important it is that this card is at base already a 6/5. Grasp of Darkness is one of the best removal spells in the format, possibly the best. It's one of the best removal spells in the format. It can't hit the Sky Sovereign and actually kill it. The other competitor for best removal spell in the format is Declaration in Stone. Can't kill the Sky Sovereign.
It can't even target it.
Right. So, of course it could if the Sky Sovereign decides to block or whatever. But, the fact that Sky Sovereign Console Flagship is so set up against the base, the level 0 removal spells that are so good, that are so desirable. And it also just goes to work killing other people's Deplas, other people's motorists, other people's Gnarlwood Dryads, whatever, other people's spell quellers, other people's whatever. It's an awesome card, but I think you hit the nail on the head. It's an Inferno Titan for 1 mana less, and then
it also flies.
It does fly, and it gets the fact that it flies is particularly valuable. Pia Noir can power up the Sky Sovereign, even if you use Pia and the Copter to crew the Sky Sovereign. The Sky Sovereign can attack in there, and if you have no other cards, you can still put your mana to work Fire Breathing. And Pia can power up the Copter, which flies, and it can power up the Cruiser, which has Trample. All of these vehicles that you can pump with Pia have a form of evasion. And then you can also power up all these vehicles with Motorists, power them up with Depla. And I think that it's worth noting that the Selfless Spirit also has evasion. There's a weirdly high amount of evasion. Pia's Thopter token has evasion. And then the Depla, I think that's something that I want to point out, is that Depla's card draw ability functionally has haste. It's not when Depla attacks. You can play your Fleetwheel Cruiser on turn 4, bash, and keep in mind Fleetwheel Cruiser just matches up so great against so many level 0 things. Like your opponent has a Sylvan Advocate.
Well, it has Trample just to begin with.
Yeah.
Any trade that they propose against you is automatically at a disadvantage because it has Trample. And that doesn't seem like a big thing, but just the things that you're talking about, all the incidental evasion, the random ability to pump with PNLR, Trample matters.
And then it also just matches up because of being a 5-3. Like when they have a Sylvan Advocate, the fact that Fleetwheel Cruiser just trumps it is so great. And one of the things that is really strong is the interaction between both Motorist and Depla on the Cruiser, because when you're powering it up as a 6-4, well, you got to crew it with something. And both Veteran Motorist and Depla can crew it all by themselves. And when you crew it, it becomes a 6-4. And as a 6-4, it's actually just like even when your opponent double blocks with two, like you're playing against Ban, they've got Sylvan Advocate and Spellqueller. The Fleetwheel Cruiser kills both if they double block it. So they're just never ending up in spots where they can get you with their 2-3s. And then the Cruiser though, because you played a Cruiser on turn 4, then on turn 5 you could actually just drop Depla, crew the Cruiser to attack again, attacking for 6, but then also just use your last 2 mana to look at your top 2 cards and draw a card a lot of the time. Like, you're starting to draw more cards immediately.
I mean, the thing about Depla is, if you're in top deck mode, you just swing with Depla. It's it, right? She could just tap all your mana, and something horrible for you might happen.
Well, and remember, a full third of the cards in this deck are dwarves or vehicles.
Yeah, so you're going to have a very high hit rate at some point.
Right. Like, on the average, Depla lets you draw a card per 3 mana you spend. That's a really efficient conversion for extra mana that's left over, and you can do it in any size increments you want. You got 1 mana, spend 1. You got 5, spend 5.
Well, you can also do it in weird times, right? If she's defensively crewing, for example.
Yep.
So, that's real powerful. And the thing that I think... It'd be one thing if you just got to draw cards when you tapped a bunch, which would probably still be a good ability, right? Some proxy for that. But she might draw Sky Sovereign, or she might draw replacement Depla, etc.
Right,
That's
and it's
real bad for you if you're on the other side of the table.
Exactly. She's drawing there's 20 cards that she's eligible to find. She's finding a disproportionate amount of Sky Sovereigns and Copters and Cruisers and Veteran Motorists, and the cards she finds are great. It's not just that she's drawing cards; she's casting Compulsive Research.
Not for nothing, she's also changing the composition of your deck. right?
Yep.
Like if she's turning over chaff, like a bunch of extra lands, it depends on what the proportions are, right? But like, let's say she turned over a bunch of land. Maybe you got like 1 or 2 hits on a large Depot activation, but she puts like 4 lands on the bottom of your library. Those are now 4 lands that aren't on top of your library, right?
Yeah, so, but that doesn't really matter. That's mostly an illusion.
Oh, I don't think so. If you know what
it's the same millstone thing. Yeah, you do know, but so what?
You do know.
Yeah, but so what? It doesn't.
It changes the composition of your deck.
It does, but not in a way you can control.
One is known, one is not known. One of them is much more. One of them could be more threat dense. The downside is if she's turning over a lot of like Harness Lightning.
No, but that's not. She's turning over a random distribution of cards. The thing that she's gaining you, which part of the reason why, like, even though what you're saying is the wrong reason to a degree, I think you are right. She's gaining you an advantage because of the knowledge. Because like when you put, like for instance, when you put a bunch of Declaration Stones on the bottom of your deck, you can actually plan and make decisions accordingly because you know that you can't plan on drawing Declaration Stone to the same degree that you would otherwise.
Do you remember that story you told me about Wafo? This was like 8 years ago, and I think it might have been you against Wafo.
It was,
yeah. But Wafo beat you because of the thing that I'm saying, right? You guys clashed early. He remembered what the clash was.
Yeah, but that doesn't. It didn't.
No,
we went to decking, and he won a clash. Anyway, Chris Van Meter's sideboard has Sky Whaler, Shot, and Fragmatize. What do you think of these 2 new options for sideboard cards, man?
The only thing I don't like about this is he only has 2 Sky Whaler Shot. If there's one thing that I've come to the conclusion on with 1 week down in this new format, it is that Sky Whaler Shot is. I can't believe I'm saying this. Right? This is a 3-mana.
Why? The card's great.
Limited kind of looking
what?
spell.
How is this limited looking?
It's limited looking.
How?
This card, my preamble is he has too few.
I know, but
this is not intuitive that this card would be this good, but
why?
It is this good.
So let's start with this. Are you on board with Smite the Monstrous being a quote-unquote limited-looking card?
I'm on board with that, yeah.
This card is like Smite the Monstrous, except better in 3 ways. It starts with costing a mana less, which is like the greatest ability ever asked.
There is, okay.
Right. Second of all, instead of hitting creatures with a power of 4 or greater, it hits 3 or greater.
Which is all the many, many more creatures are now targetable.
And contextually, it's super relevant because the defining card is Smuggler's Copter. There's Veteran Motorist, Depla, Toolcraft, Exemplar, and Smuggler's Copter, to say nothing of Sky Sovereign or Fleetwheel Cruiser. This is like the fast aggro deck.
Smite the Monstrous would have been able to hit those last 2.
Right. The ones that it hits exactly are tremendous in this deck. And then, as if that wasn't enough, where we already made the card like 33% better and 33% cheaper, it also has Scry 1, which is like 33% of the card already. This is twice as strong as Smite the Monstrous.
So I'm saying I think the card's really good, even though it doesn't look that good. I think that I'm not saying it's not good. I said limited looking. But I also said I wish I played more.
I'm saying I wish that you would look at this card and see that it looks good.
I don't think it doesn't need to have to look good. It needs to be good.
Yeah, I just want you to have a discerning eye. I'm counting on you.
Good. Like, I think this card is probably, maybe it's main deckable, but I think it's probably, at equilibrium, it's probably a 4 of, not a 2 of in a lot of decks. Maybe it should be a 4 of in decks that can cast it. I don't know. Because it also, just forget about the stuff we're talking about right this second. Because the format is going to move backwards, blossom, go sideways, go up and down from where it is right now. It's probably relevant if this card can shoot cards like, I don't know, Archangel Avacyn.
Yeah.
It's not like that card isn't still an ace and still isn't in the format, right? Like, there are a lot of things that matter that this is going to be able to target that, like, I don't know, any kind of Mind Rack Demon or, Lone Verdurous Gearhulk are all things that you might want to try to target with Sky Whaler's Shot.
Elder Deep Fiend.
Oh, the fact that it's an instant is actually bananas.
Yes, exactly.
Like Elder Deep Fiend, etc.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really, really big deal. But I did want to mention Fragmatize. What do you think about that one, man? 1 mana. We talked about this last week a little bit.
I mean, how much does Smuggler's Copter cost?
Cost 2.
Is that less than 4? I kind of like that interaction, being able to destroy the defining card of the format for 1 mana.
I like that it also hits Fleetwheel Cruiser, but man, not hitting Sky Sovereign is so big.
Yeah, but you've got Sky Whaler's shot for that.
Dude, what do you think about Weaver of Lightning?
I don't like that one at all.
Are you serious?
I don't think it makes sense in this deck to me. I don't.
Weaver of Lightning is great.
Because it contains Smuggler's Copter?
Yeah. And it's just because you are shooting things. You're just letting it spray. I don't know that I think you might be right. It's definitely not at its best in this deck. This is not the best Weaver of Lightning deck I've ever seen.
He has
I like Weaver of Lightning in blue-red.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I kind of had this fantasy of having Thermo Alchemist and Weaver of Lightning in play next to each other and them being best friends. But this deck is 2 Harness Lightning and 4 Declaration in Stone. Weaver of Lightning is it's just not doing unless you're telling me that you think that a 1/4 reach for 3 is a really exciting thing. Then okay.
Well, no. I think let's. I mean, I agree with you that it's not at its best, but let's call a spade for a spade. The matchups where you board Weaver of Lightning in, you always board in 4 Galvanic Bombardment, 2 Sky Whaler Shot, and 2 Fragmatize.
Yeah.
So you do have 14 hits, not 6.
You're bringing in with 11 cards in the mirror or whatever, right?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you often bring in 15 because the Gideons do get a lot better once you have 14 removal spells.
I thought you were on board of Gideon not being good against vehicles.
Yeah, but that's in the main deck.
So
Gideon's a sideboard card, man.
Well, let's actually get to this in a contextualized sense. Is the way to go after this kind of deck to starve it of crew, right? You just want to, if you kill all the crew, but I think if they have 1 crew, you might just get blown over. That's the thing I'm afraid of, because the crew have haste, right? No matter what.
The crew do have haste.
So I'm a little worried about that.
So when you're playing against this deck, it has tons of exploitable elements to it. So let's start with, would you agree that 1 and 2 mana removal spells can be quite good against this strategy?
Yes, that is a pretty easy thing to agree with.
Second, would you agree that this deck doesn't have very much in the way of being able to remove problematic permanents?
I think that's too broad of a statement. I think it has very good removal card access if it wants certain things, right? You mean this specific 75, or do you mean red white vehicle decks?
This specific 75.
Yeah, this deck can't target destroy a planeswalker, but it could fight a planeswalker with things like Smuggler's Copter and Sky Sovereign very, very effectively.
How would this deck do against, for instance, Verdurous Gearhulk and Blossoming Defense?
It has to be faster.
Well, that's not the beginning. That's the end.
Oh, if the opponent has an active... Okay, if the opponent just has a Verdurous Gearhulk and a Blossoming Defense in his hand, the Verdurous Gearhulk and whatever his buddy is are probably just going to trample over the tiny guys in this deck. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying that, this deck is part of this. So some of the things I think are exploitable about this deck are if you just have the right types of removal, you can gain mana. This deck has lots of creatures that are susceptible to some various forms of interaction. Radiant Flames isn't instant win; it doesn't hit all the vehicles, but it's a great card, right? If you just play with some super powerful cards, though, it's not like Gnarlwood Dryad and Verdurous Gearhulk and Grimflare are bad cards. I just think you have to tune.
Not slouches, they're.
No, I think you just have to tune which of your cards. You have to just be able to interact with the vehicles deck. Play the types of cards play Deadweight instead of Ruinous Path. Play with some cheap interaction, get a little bit of tempo. Because if you get a little bit of tempo, it's not like Dwarves plus Vehicles is inherently strong. It is strong because these cards are strong, but as a strategy, it's just some cards that it's some dwarves and some creatures that are drawback creatures. Because Vehicle in many ways is a drawback.
Well, it's kind of a weird equipment creature enchantment hybrid, I think.
Yeah,
It's it's like a creature only when there's a creature to stick it on, but it doesn't die, so it's kind of like an equipment.
So I wanted to touch on some of the other variations of white red to see your thoughts on some of these other ones. Like, for instance, what do you think of Donovan's build of Boros vehicles? He's got his twist. I mean, Inventor's Apprentice we talked about briefly, but he's also got 4 Handwear Garrison.
So I'll tell you the first thing I did when I looked at this deck list, I was just like, Handwear Garrison, is that a human? I looked and it is in fact a human. I don't know. Like I think this deck is
as is Inventor's Apprentice.
But this deck is so much slower than CVM's deck. That's the thing. Like, look at all the 3-drops, right?
Yeah,
like
I also just think
Garrison and like, is Thalia Heretic Catharp line up particularly well against Smuggler's Copter? It's not even like the vehicles aren't even creatures to begin with, but I guess Thalia slows down crew, right? So you can just like jump in crew.
Yeah, like it also slows down the ability for other people to block, like when you're pressing. But the thing is, like you're playing like Inventor's Apprentice instead of Toolcraft Exemplar. Like, what are you even like? What are you even accomplishing?
Well, it's just a smaller and it's weird in a white deck. It's kind of weird.
Well, part of the problem I have is that his mana base is 5 mountains, 5 plains. It's like, hopefully you just match up right. Whereas like Chris Van Meter, this is pure. He's got 14 ways to play his Toolcraft Exemplar or Thraben Inspector on curve on turn 1 without missing a beat. I mean, this is clean. 4 Needle Spire, 4 Inspiring Vantage, 10 plains, 6 mountains.
So what I'd say about Donovan's deck is, if you get in there with Handwear Garrison a couple of times, like a mid-game Thalia's Lieutenant Rip could be pretty impressive. But I don't know. I can't get behind this one as much. I like the other one so much more.
I mean, he's also got like Handwear Battlements as a colorless land. And then 4 Aether Hub mean he's only 1 source short of hitting his white 1-drop on 1. Or I mean, in his case, red 1-drop on 1. But like, he also just has Aether Hub when he wants to play a Adventurer's Apprentice on 1 and Gideon on 4. I don't know. I also just like Fleetwheel Cruiser so much more than Gideon. And do not play Sky Sovereign. I'd rather, I mean,
well,
I guess it's just...
I think Sky Sovereign was not a level 0 play. That's the problem. Right? Like, I think Sky Sovereign is, in fact, one of the defining things that makes CVM's deck a little bit better than the other decks.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all the decks, most of the white-red aggro decks in, like, people's previews and stuff were all playing Sky Sovereign. I think you just... I don't know. I think the Sky Sovereign should just... Although I guess when you look at Mike Kenny, I mean, Mike Kenny's list doesn't have Sky Sovereign either. So maybe you're right. Maybe that's... And part of it is they only have like 22 and 23 land. Maybe that is part of what makes CVM's deck so good, is that maybe it wasn't intuitive to play 24 land, play mid-range, play more grind, more... You know, because like playing Thraben Inspector also helps hit your land drops.
Well, you know, I actually like some things about Kenny's deck better than Donovan's deck. Like 4 PNLR and then some Servo Expedition. But I think if you're going to go in that direction with Reckless Bushwhacker and Servo Expedition, I kind of feel like you should go all the way. Like, it
is weird to like hedge.
Like, that seems like, you know, embrace it. You know, this is the way you're going to go. You only have 22 lands. I would probably get behind cutting some Gideons out of this deck in order to go in that direction. But by the same token, you know, why do you not just have more copies of Fleetwheel Cruiser then?
So what do you think of Jason Reed's version? 11th place finisher Jason Reed was playing a Mardu Vehicles deck, which is basically just the white-red... It's just Boros Vehicles. But he uses 4 Concealed Courtyard and 4 Aether Hub so that he can splash 4 Unlicensed Disintegration.
Well, he's got Scrap Heap Scrounger, too.
Yeah, and activate Scrap Heap Scrounger, but... The novel element, I think Scrap Heap Scrounger is good, but I think the novel element here is really Unlicensed Disintegration is like, that's just a different dimension than relying on Declaration in Stone and Harnessed Lightning.
Well, so, first of all, Unlicensed Disintegration, call a spade, this is like Searing Murder, right?
Oh, yeah. It's good. You're saying that's upside. Yeah, like, okay, good.
It's an instant, right? So... first of all, it can just kill anything. So this is like murderish. It can kill like a Virtus Gear Hulk. It can kill a Smuggler's Copter.
Kill Sky Sovereign.
Yeah, etc. Right, this card's super sweet. I don't think it's the best card in his deck because he's got Smuggler's Copter, but it's probably the second best card in his deck. The question is...
I don't know. Depth was pretty insane. And Veteran Motorist. But anyway, go ahead.
The question is it worth the black? And I actually think no.
That I don't know.
I'm guessing no.
I do think it's not a very expensive splash. I mean, 4 Aether Hubs and 4 Concealed Courtyards. You got to admit, that's actually pretty cheap.
Yeah, but it's expensive relative to not having it at all.
Yeah, it is. Right? I also just...
Not everybody even plays Fiery Temper.
5 mountains, 2 plains hurts me, though.
Yeah, I think it's too...
That's one of the things I love about CVMs. It's just so clean. The mana base is just so good.
Yeah, I actually... If I were playing CVM's mana base, I think I would want Aether Hub. Do you think that's wrong?
You would want Aether Hub?
Yeah, it's good with Harness Lightning, too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like Aether Hub that much. I think it's fine. Maybe it's right to play, but I just worry too much about the... I think colorless lands are not necessarily all that good in this deck, despite the amount of vehicles that are in it. I just think that when you need your color, but I think it's fine. I think you could play some. I don't have high confidence either way. It could just totally be right to play 4. I don't know.
What's amazing to me is that we've had these, series of sets that with such high impact cards coming in a variety of formats, not just standard, but also modern. And we've had cards like Reality Smasher come in, but they're already obviated by the next set. And it's not like the other card wasn't sweet anymore. Like Reality Smasher is still a sweet card. It's just not Smuggler's Copter right now.
I mean, the format's also just evolved a little bit,
Yeah, and I'm just saying this is cool. It's something I appreciate. I do think before we enter,
we got to talk about Jacob Hagen's fourth place Rakdos.
We got to talk about Black Red. I think this deck is. It's not even the sleeper. How can you say it's the sleeper when it's performing at the level it has? But I don't know. I think Black Red is something special. It occupies a different spot than White Red in that I think it's like the pace setter. It's got to be a little faster, don't you think?
I'm not sure. I assume that it is faster than CVMs, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And it's got interesting angles. Like back when we used to play test the previous group in New York, like this is a kind of deck that Paul Jordan would have called deceptively card advantageous. That you look at it and it looks like a fast deck, but it's got all these little things that if you add them up at the end of a game, oh, wow, you edged me a bunch of these different things, and it looked like you were just, getting a blocker through or something. I'm in particular, of course, talking about Key to the City, which I think that card's really cool.
Yeah, it's nice having extra discard outlets. You've got a variety of synergies, Fiery Temper and Scrappy Scrounger. And you also just need a critical mass of artifacts to get your most destination and Inventor's Apprentice.
Yeah, I think this is, among other things, I think it's a great Inventor's Apprentice. But Red Wiggles, and I'm just convinced by the fact that he was the winner of first week. I feel like Red Wiggles is okay, not even good. Like you mentioned, one of the versions that had been doesn't even have Toolbox Exemplar, which is, to me, straight up the better guy, for a job at this stage. But I think this is a great little for Artifact Curd Elf. Whatever. What's his nickname? Kurt.
No, it's not. Inventor's.
All right, Inventor's Apprentice.
Fine. Dude, Key to the City's up one card you can't block ability. Actually important. With 4 bar, you cards you can't block, and Key to the City creature can't block this turn. It's actually subtly strong against Archangel as you have an instant 0 cost or very low cost way to remove a blocker. And it just makes it so that you can threaten to just combo people out because you can do stuff like Scrap Heap Scrounger, or you can sacrifice. That's a big thing, right?
Yeah. Oh my god. I thought that's one of the things that advantageous that I could have had.
I'm only medium on that guy. I think he's okay, but I think it's kind of. I'm a little medium.
Think about it like this: what's the right number of offensive 1-drops you want?
11 or 12.
All right, so he's 4 of them. Right, and
you do need artifact synergies, right? If you're under 100, maybe there's a chance you can just play Falkenrath Gorger. It's even sweet. You can put a second Gorger to your Smuggler's Copter and then put it directly into play.
What
about that green-white Smuggler's Copter deck?
Or the one that like Tom Ross played?
Yeah.
Yeah, like Brad and the world champ and Tom Ross all played. I'll be honest with you. The reason that I think that Gideon is going to make a comeback, and the reason that I think Gideon is probably better in the format than he looks on account of not being in the... I guess he's in the sideboard of the winning deck this week. It's because of that deck. Like, activate Gideon, slap a Gear Hulk onto him is... Sign me up.
Yeah, I think that's good. Here's why I like the deck that Tom and Brad and BBD played. Outside of the fact that, I mean, it literally has the two best cards in the set in it. Verdurous Gear Hulk and Smuggler's Copter. Right, like, already, like, and maybe I don't know, Depwa and Sky Sovereign and Fleetwood Cruiser is like a critical mass thing. But if you just want to go, like, with single best one of, like, what are the two best cards? It's Verdurous Gear Hulk and Smuggler's Copter, and it has both.
Yeah, you sure about that? I think Chandra's going to show you something.
You think Chandra's going to prove better than Verdurous Gear Hulk or Smuggler's Copter?
Not better than Smuggler's Copter, but I think that you'll at least...
Do you think it's going to be better than Verdurous Gear Hulk?
I think that Chandra will have a longer, richer career than Verdurous Gear Hulk in multiple formats. That's my...
I'm not talking about multiple formats. I'm
just
talking about standard
just right now. All right, I mean, it's hard to argue with Verdurous Gear Hulk at this point.
Dude, Verdurous Gear Hulk is, like, crazy. And then, like, the fact that they've got Verdurous Gear, and then I like a bunch of the other things. I think it's real smart, the Servant of the Conduit thing they got going. I like that.
Yeah, what do you like about their little, like, Fiend Hunter guy?
I like that guy. That guy was born to crew a copter. I got respect for that guy. He knows how to crew.
He crews a copter.
He crews a copter so good. And then Blossoming Defenses is the one I appreciate. You can tell. That is a veteran move.
Brad played 4.
Yes.
4 copies.
Yes. It is a veteran move. You can tell, like, somebody who's been playing on the scene, like somebody who's been playing on the tournament scene for like 3 or 4 years, they don't show up with like 3 or 4 Blossoming Defenses week 1. Tom Ross, BBD, Brad Nelson, they will show up with 3 or 4 Blossoming Defenses.
Those might have been the 3 best players in the tournament that you just named.
They're great. And they're all great deck builders. They're not just great players, they're all great deck builders. So, like, the fact that they show up with Blossoming Defenses, I get it. And also, their pedigree is such that if they did it in the dark, I'm assuming that it was right and for a reason. That's not true for most of the decks in this, you know.
You look at Tom's deck, like, only 3 Blossoming Defense in his version, right? But he's got a lot of the stuff we talked about. He's got Tunis of Vital Force in his sideboard. He's got a Linvala the Preserver. These guys all played Fumigate, too.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that I can, like, I'm not in love with Tireless Tracker. It's okay. I do think it's interesting that Brad did not play Always Watching.
I think you convinced me on Tyler's Tracker, which I never thought I would be convinced of. But I think I could go to 0 to him, and I could live with it.
The thing I think that is just so smart, and this is going to be kind of a surprising one, but I like Quarantine Field. I like that both Tom and Brad, they both played Quarantine Field in their sideboard. I think that's so smart.
Even with Fragmentize?
Yep.
I guess you know what it does? It just gets, even if it just gets you in there for a turn, that might be sweet. Right? Because you can remove
people don't just load up their deck with Fragmentizes against your Verdurous Gear Hulk deck. I mean, you're playing a deck of Gideons and Gear Hulks. You think everybody's going to just load up on Fragmentize?
I think that
exciting week 1.
A lot of different things that you could, sideboard in against this kind of a deck because it's like so many awesome threats and so many different angles. But yeah, super exciting for week 1. Good job calling Smuggler's Copter. 8 people in the top 8 agreed with you.
Well, awesome, man. I'm excited to see what comes up next week leading into the Pro Tour. I got to fly to Hawaii tomorrow and get ready to break it. I'm excited because this format, it might be degenerate. It might not be. One thing is certain is that now that we are living in Smuggler's Copter's world, it's just a completely different format than the one we used to know.
Absolutely agree. And tough life going to Hawaii to play Magic. I hope you do really well.
I want a major thanks to everybody for following us on Twitter, Top of a Podcast, Facebook, Top of a Podcast, Patreon, YouTube, all that. We are super loving kicking it with you guys every week.
Yep. Thanks everybody, and especially thanks to Will Curley from Patreon.
Thank you, Will, man.
Cool. Bye, Pat.
Much appreciated. See you next week, bro.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge for jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my